By the second week, the Outpost had its own cast that felt as real as any stateside unit. Staff Sergeant Harlan, my squad leader, practical and strict, treats the rules like doctrine. Sergeant First Class Amir, Operations Senior NCO, calm, analytical, refuses superstition but follows procedures. Sergeant Klein, team leader, dry humor, believes in the rules because he's seen what happens. Specialist Velez, my roommate, competent, tired, observant in a way that makes people feel uncomfortable. PFC Dyer, my other roommate, inexperienced but not stupid. He asks questions but get ignored. Staff Sergeant Boone, MP, older, blunt, has seen way too much. Doc Hahn, medic, quiet, tracks small details like sleep patterns and missing gear. Contractor Lowe, civilian comms guy, always near cables and excuses. And there was the local worker, Samir, not his real name, but the name he gave us. He works laundry in the water point. Those last two matter a lot. Rule 3 became the most sacred. It was a simple gate, metal frame, padlock, chain, concertina wire above. It led to a narrow service road outside the wire that wrapped behind a bridge. In daylight, it was unremarkable. At night, it felt like a mouth. Between 0100 and 0330, nobody touched it. Not for vehicles, not for emergency egress, not for anything. The first time I asked why, Harlan gave me a look like I'd asked why we wore body armor outside. He said, "Because you don't open it." That was the only answer he gave. Then one night, the Outpost tried to make us open it. We had a small generator issue around 0120. The lights in one CHU row dimmed. The TOC lost power for about 3 seconds before switching to backup. It wasn't catastrophic, but it got everyone's attention. Contractor Lowe said the issue was in the south line power feed, near the maintenance area. Amir told Lowe to wait until morning. Lowe insisted. He said if the feed failed completely, the south sensors might go down, and we'd lose early warning. He talked like a person who'd never had to stand outside the wire in the dark. Amir held his stare. He said, "We will keep the sensors up using redundancy until 0330. We will not open that gate." Lowe looked annoyed. He said, "That's not how power works." Amir said, "This outpost is not how power works." Then he assigned Boone and Klein to check the inside line, without opening any gates. They went with flashlights and tools, staying inside the wire. They found nothing obvious. At 0205, someone knocked on the TOC door. A single knock. Then 2 knocks. Then silence. Amir looked up. No one moved. Another knock. Then a voice. "Help." It was faint, like it was coming from far away. Then the voice said, "Please." Lowe's face changed. He looked at Amir like this was his chance to prove the rules were nonsense. He stepped toward the door. Amir's voice cut him off. "Sit." Lowe hesitated. The voice outside said, "It's cold." Then it said, "Open the gate." Not the door. The gate. The voice didn't sound like a local. It didn't sound like one of ours either. It sounded like someone trying to imitate panic without understanding it. Like an actor reading a line they'd heard once. Lowe swallowed. He said, Is that someone outside?" Boone shifted his weight, hand near his weapon. Amir didn't answer. He keyed the radio. "Tower 2, Report activity near South Maintenance Gate. Tower 2 responded after a pause. Negative activity. No visible personnel. No thermals. Amir nodded once. The voice outside the talk said, "Open it. I can't get in." Dyer, who had been assigned to the talk for the shift, whispered, "That sounds like..." He stopped himself. "Finish," Amir said. Dyer's eyes were wide. "That sounds like Specialist Milo." Nobody spoke for a full 5 seconds. Then Velez said, quietly, "Milo's gone." The voice outside repeated, "Open it." Lowe stood up anyway. He said, "If someone's out there..." Amir stood as well, faster than I expected. He didn't shout. He said, "Sit down." Lowe's jaw tightened. He said, "You don't get to order civilians around." Boone stepped in, half turning so Lowe could see the MP patch on his shoulder. Then he said, "You want to test it? You do it alone." Lowe looked at Boone, then at Amir. The voice outside changed again. It stopped pretending to be cold. It said clearly and calmly, "Open the south gate." It sounded closer now, like it had moved from the talk hallway to the talk wall itself. The hair on my arms lifted. Amir didn't move. He said to no one in particular, "Rule 3. Then he sat back down, picked up his pen, and started writing. He was documenting it. Like this was just another incident to be logged. The voice stopped. Then, at 0237, the south line lights blinked once. Just once. Like eyelids. Boone exhaled slowly. Lowe sat back down without anyone telling him to. He didn't speak again for the rest of the shift. Rule 11 sounded impossible the first time I read it. If you see a person standing at the water point who does not cast a shadow. That felt like something written by someone trying to sound haunted. Then I saw it. The water point was near the center of the outpost, where the bladders and purification system sat behind a barrier. It was always lit, because you didn't mess around with potable water. One afternoon, after a patrol, I went to refill my canteens. It was still daylight, but late enough that shadows were long. A local worker, Samir, was at the water point, carrying an empty container. Samir was usually quiet and polite. He kept his eyes down. He worked fast. He was the kind of presence you stop noticing because he never changed. He glanced up when I approached, like he wanted to speak. Then he hesitated. He pointed at my boots. I looked down. They were dusty, which was normal. Samir said something in his language, then repeated it in broken English. "Boots. Move." I frowned. "What?" He pointed again, more insistently. "Boots move at night." I felt my stomach tighten because Rule 10 flashed in my head. If you wake up and your boots are not where you left them. I asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Samir's eyes flickered down toward the churro, then back to me. He said, "Not safe. Boots. Not safe." I tried to ask more, but he stepped back and lowered his gaze, like he'd already said too much. Then, 3 nights later, I woke up at 0315 to a sound I can only describe as a soft scrape. I didn't sit up immediately. I listened. The scrape came again, closer this time. I turned my head toward the floor where I kept my boots, and they weren't there. For a moment, my brain tried to solve it rationally. Maybe I'd left them outside. Maybe Velez moved them. Maybe I was just half asleep. Then I saw them. They were at the far end of the chew, near the door. Toes pointed outward like someone had placed them to face the exit. I hadn't done that. I didn't get up. I stared. The scrape came again, and one boot moved. It didn't lift up. It was dragged. A slow inching movement, like it was being pulled by a string that I couldn't see. My throat went dry. I remembered Rule 10, but the rule didn't tell you what to do if you watch the move. It said, do not put them on. Notify your team leader. So I reached for my red lead's headlamp, turned it on, and aimed it low. The boot stopped moving immediately, like it was reacting to light. I sat up. Velez was awake too. He was sitting on his bunk, breathing through his nose, eyes fixed on the boots. He didn't look surprised. He said quietly, "Don't touch them." Dyer whispered from his bunk, "What's happening?" Velez said, "Go back to sleep." Dyer didn't. He sat up and stared. The boots didn't move again, not while the light was on. Velez grabbed his radio, whispered a quick call to Klein, and told him we had a Rule 10 situation. Klein arrived with Doc Hahn 10 minutes later. Doc Hahn hadn't asked what happened. He stepped in, looked at the boots, and nodded like he was confirming something. Klein said, "Did you see them move?" I didn't want to admit it, like admitting it made me complicit. "Yes," I said. Klein exhaled. He said, "All right." He took a marker from his pocket, wrote something on a strip of tape, and stuck it to the boots. Then he grabbed the boots with a glove and carried them out of the chew. Dyer asked, "Where are you taking them?" Klein said, "Away." "That's not an answer," Dyer said, voice rising. Klein looked at him, and he said, "It's the only one you get." Doc Hahn stayed behind a moment and looked at me. He said, "You sleep much lately?" "Not really." He nodded. He said, "It likes tired people." Then he left. I sat there for a long time after they were gone, staring at the empty spot where my boots should have been. When I finally lay back down, I heard it. A second set of breathing, matching my own. And it was right beside my bunk. I kept my body still. I didn't turn my head. I didn't run. I remembered Rule 12. Return to a lit area. Do not run. So I sat up slowly, turned on my headlamp again, and swung my legs down. The breathing stopped as soon as the red light hit the chew wall. Velez watched me like he was measuring how close I'd come to making a mistake. He said, "Don't chase it." I wasn't going to. He nodded once. "Good," he said. Then he lay back down like this was normal. Rule 9 sounded like a technical issue. If the radio transmits a second voice over yours, on any other outpost, you'd assume interference. Someone stepping on the net, a bad handset. At Aster, it wasn't technical. It was personal. We were running a routine comms check with a patrol outside the wire. I was in the talk. Amir was beside me, and Lo was working on a rack of equipment. The patrol leader was Sergeant Klein. Klein called in a timing update. I acknowledged. Everything was normal. Then I keyed the mic to pass a message to Tower 1. I said, "Tower 1, talk. Confirm South Line sensor status." My voice transmitted. Then a second voice transmitted over mine, perfectly timed, like it was in the same room. It said, in a low mimic of my tone, "Confirm." I froze mid-transmission. Amir's hand snapped down on my wrist, pushing the handset away from my mouth like it was hot. He said, "Stop." I stopped. The second voice didn't. It finished the transmission for me. Confirm south line sensor status. Then it released the mic with a click. The talk went silent. Even the generator hum felt quieter for a second. Tower 1 responded, confused. Talk. Say again. Who was that? Amir grabbed the alternate handset and switched to a different frequency without looking at the radio operator board. He responded in a steady tone. Tower 1. Disregard previous. Stand by. Lowe had gone pale. He stared at the handset like he just watched it speak. He whispered, "That's impossible." Amir didn't look at him. He said to me, "Rule 9. I nodded, throat tight. Then Amir did something that stuck with me. He opened a logbook and wrote the time, the net, and one sentence. Second voiceover transmission. No exclamation points, no commentary, no theory, just a record. That was how you kept saying it, Aster. You treated the impossible like a reportable condition, not a story. Later in the chew, Dyer asked me what happened, so I told him. He listened, eyes wide, then said, "Why would it do that?" Velez answered without looking up, "Because you let it hear you." Dyer said, "So what? We should never talk on the radios?" Velez shook his head. "No. You should talk exactly when you need to, and you should stop the second it starts talking back." Dyer stared at him. "That's insane." Velez finally met his eyes. "Then don't count the footsteps," he said. Rule 6 seemed like simple force protection. Do not accept food or tea from local workers after sundown. That sounded like a contamination warning, or a polite way of saying don't fraternize. Then Samir offered me tea after sundown. It happened near the laundry area. I was grabbing uniforms. The sun was down. The lights were on. And the air had that cold desert edge. Samir held out a small cup. He said, "Tea." I hesitated. He smiled lightly, like he knew the rule, like he was testing whether I did too. I said, "No, thank you." Samir's smile faded. He leaned closer and said quietly, "Good." Then he turned and walked away. I stood there with my laundry basket, confused. When I told Amir later, he didn't look surprised. He said, "He was warning you." From what? Amir's eyes stayed calm. He said, "From the other ones." I asked, "Other local workers?" Amir shook his head once. "No," he said. "Not workers." Then he went back to his map board.